That was pretty good. I must be getting better at this. All right, well, welcome back, everyone, to Spring 2015. I think probably all of you know me by now. If you don't, I'm Bruce Silverberg, architecture instructor and chair of the Faculty Professional Development Committee. And on behalf of our committee, I want to welcome you all to opening day. Before we get into the festivities here, I do want to just make mention of one opportunity for full-time faculty. We've been working last fall and over the break and continuing through the next couple of months to put together a full-time faculty retreat. And it's a really special opportunity. The title, Building a Community of Educators, Great Teaching, Retention, and Persistence. And we're bringing in a national expert on the subject, Alan Seidman, who runs the Center for the Study of College Student Retention. And he's coming from New Hampshire to keynote this thing and conduct a workshop along with the other discussions we'll be having. You probably have received the several emails I've been sending about this with the link to the online application form. As this stuff tends to drop below the fold quickly in your preview windows, I'm trying not to be obnoxious about it, but you'll probably keep getting these things from me every several days between now and the application deadline of 5 p.m. on January 30th. So we encourage you to apply. Space is limited. I won't hector you anymore about it, but just to be forewarned. Some of our senior officials have made trips to Sacramento, and we might hear a little bit about that, even though the whatever formal announcement is not yet released yet. And then, of course, there's all the activity around the passage of our bond, and we'll be getting updates on that. So, without any, yes, and that's obviously this has been a big year for us, and again, the continued climb back, and we're all excited about that. So, without any further ado, let me introduce Dr. Gil Stork.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Let me just review a little more detail about what we're going to experience this morning. We are going, as you've been seeing on the screen, we've been featuring the new hires and individuals who have declared that they'll be retiring this year. And we're going to introduce individuals and make sure you see who they are and where they're sitting, and encourage you to take the step and introduce yourself and help make people feel welcome. We're also going to distribute 2 awards, the Elaine Holley Coates Service Excellence Award and also the Virginia Sullivan Inspirational Faculty Award. We'll give you an update on the Measure L rollout so that you have a clear picture of what's going to be happening this spring, this summer, and fall, because there are lots of these activities are going to impact all of us in terms of what we see happening, what we're asked to do, where we're asked to move, what we're to take, what we're to leave behind, and hopefully we get settled again. Vice President Summer attended the budget workshop day before yesterday in Sacramento, following the governor's release of the tentative 2015-16 budget, and this is actually the first time that she's been able to be here to relate what that information looked like, because normally it's held today. So we have the opportunity for Tony to share that with us. And then I'll make some closing remarks in regard to the future of Cuesta College and my vision for this, the rest of this year and in the near future. So at this time, I'd like to introduce 2 of our trustees that are here, Dr. Barbara George. Thank you. Trustee Dick Hitchman. And our board president, Trustee Mullen. Thank you. Okay. I have to make sure I introduce them because that's 3 votes. And I have a 5-member board, it only takes 3 votes, you know, so, okay. So I always have to be sensitive to that. All right. So the first part that we'd like to do now, I'd like to ask Dr. Wolf and Tony Summer and Sandy McLaughlin to come forward now so we can introduce our new hires and also recognize our members of our staff who are going to be retiring. Thank you. Who's going first? Are you?
They're on.
They're not going to do that order. We just do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, and happy Spring 2015. Wow, that's an odd year to roll off your... Woo! Okay, so join me in welcoming. You've probably seen many of these people at work already, but I want to bring attention to new employees in student services. We have Lucia Herrera, who is an ESL outreach coordinator in North County, and outreach specialist. And if you're here, Lucia, will you stand up and be recognized? There she is. Okay. We have Catherine Riedstra Machado, as you may be more familiar with her. She's an interim dean of student services. And Catherine is at a leadership institute in Southern California this morning and can't be with us. And she is attending that with Stephen Roldan, who is our next new employee, who is, other than what it says here, he's actually our Director of Disabled Students Programs and Services, and we're really pleased to have him. And our new financial aid technician, Cindy Monterosa. Is she here this morning? There she is. All right. Welcome, Cindy. And we have 2 employees from the CalWorks program. CalWorks is now part of Student Services. Denise Rosberg, who is a clerical assistant. There she is back there. And Karina Stolp, a caseworker there she is. And I want to mention another individual, Louis Quaid, who has a new full-time position back with Disabled Student Services as our alternate media facilitator. Thank you.
Good morning. For those of you who do not know who I am, I'm Tony Sommer. I'm the Vice President of Administrative Services. And I'd like to introduce our new employees. The first one I'd like to introduce is Clint Martin. Clint, are you here? Clint is not new. Clint was actually over in facilities, and he's now our new General Services Technician. So thank you, Clint. We also... Oh, I threw away the wrong paper. Now I got to fake this, okay? Thank you. Hey. I have 7 weeks and today, so I can do that. Okay, we have Alexander Ersman with Facilities. Is Alexander here? There's Alexander back there. David Gibson, who's with Facilities. David, are you here? David was with us and left us for a while and is back, so we're happy to have him back. Shanna Ahrens, Shanna's over here. She's our new budget accountant. Kathleen Casey. Kathleen Casey is our new safety coordinator. Officer Eric George, are you here? Officer Eric George is our new police officer. Is Zachary Green here? He's with Facilities to keep you nice and toasty. And I am very excited that we have a new IT director, Keith Stearns.
Good morning. It's great to see all of you this morning. Welcome back. I'm going to announce new hires that we have. Cecilia Ford, please stand if you're here. Cecilia. And she's with WD and CP, Computer Programs, caseworker. Welcome. Sandra Carr. Sandra Carr is here, and she's a clerical assistant 2. We have Selena Malarkey, who is a clerical assistant 3, working with computer programs. Right there. We have Julie Parker, who is a secretary 3 in community programs. Kevin Selman, who is in community programs, a caseworker. Kevin. Grant Fremter, who is the new Fine and Performing Arts Ceramic Studio. Amanda Shearer, who's the Sustainability Education Specialist with Community Programs. And we have Midori Feldman in Academic Affairs, and she's the Dean's Assistant for WD. All right, retirements. This is the sad portion, but I'm happy for all of them. We have, all of you know, Kate Cater left us last fall and officially retired in December, and she's no longer with us, but she's enjoying retirement. She was John Cascamo's assistant, Dean's assistant. Janny Johnson, are you here, Janny? Janny's leaving us at the end of the semester, which is a very sad thing for all of us, and none of us are going to be quite as fit as we once were. Dawn Smith, Nursing and Allied Health. Dawn. Are you here? Dawn has done a phenomenal job of our Med-Assist program. She will be sorely missed. It's going to be a sad day for Nursing and Allied Health. And then we have Karen Waska. Karen, are you here? Hey, Karen. She's retiring from the Student Success. Sad for our students, and I'm happy for you, Karen. So anyway, the other part that I was going to mention that I hope you're excited about, in the beginning of fall, I ran just a Ask the VP kind of meeting during professional development days, and I asked what faculty wanted and what we needed to do in academic fairs, and one of the things that they talked about is they wanted a faculty retreat. And so the Professional Development Committee, along with the Academic Senate, put together this retreat, and we're very excited, so I hope you all apply. It is going to be March 20th through the 22nd, and it's at the Avila Lighthouses. And Bruce, thanks for talking about it. And we're bringing in Alan Sedman, and he's in Costa Rica, and we're going to be flying him in here to be the keynote speaker and also do breakout sessions. So I'm looking forward to working with the Professional Development Committee. We're going to meet with Alan, I think, next week to have a discussion about how it's going to go, and I hope you apply to go to the retreat. Thank you. Have a great semester.
And I have two announcements in my area. First of all, I'd like to, before Tony sits down, stand up. As you know, it's probably no secret that you've heard the rumors around that Tony is retiring at the end of February. So when she made a little comment about the number of weeks and days, she's serious, unless we can do something in the meantime. I had the wonderful privilege when I was the Vice President of Student Services serve on her hiring committee back in 1998, and we were able to capture her from Mount San Antonio College, and now I've had the wonderful pleasure of working with her, and as she runs down the floor and out the door. So, Tony, congratulations, and you'll be sorely missed. Thank you. But for every departure, we bring on new people that give us new life and new energy and new perspective. And I also had the privilege of bringing on board a new executive director of human resources and labor relations. As you know, Bill Benjamin left us, and during that time we had Annette Loria came in and served as the interim, and we were very, very fortunate to find a young woman from actually working in Colorado, but had come from West Hills Community College District, so she's very familiar with California and also with the community college. So I'd like to introduce Melissa Richardson. So at this time we have some awards to give out. So I have and I'd like to invite Kevin Bottenwall to come up and join me since he'll be giving one of the two awards. Kevin, come on up. So, let's see. I saw somebody earlier here. I don't normally see this person quite this time of the day. Chris Wayland. Is Chris here? Where's Chris? Chris, come on up. Come on down. A funny story, I was out warming my hands with coffee, and Chris comes up. Come up here, Chris. She comes up and says, "This is not my time of day," she says. I said, well, you'd have to be used to doing something new and exciting. So, Chris, I just wanted to let you know that you have been selected for the Elaine Holley Coates Service Excellence Award. All right, Chris, you can visit later. You got to pay attention now. Chris, last year we renamed this award in honor of Elaine Holley Coates, who we all know, those of us who have worked here a long time, know what a spirit and what a professional that Elaine was and still is to all of us, and was very generous. I think Lynn Mall was our first recipient last year with that new name, and fitting in that particular tradition, you were nominated and selected. And I'd just like to share with you some of the comments that more than 25 people said. I'm not going to read all 25, but and I'll give this to you so you can read it all in luxury. But Chris serves as the resolution specialist, and I don't know if you know what that is, but she deals with all the cases of student issues, student grievances, student complaints, and she's really a problem solver. She's a hand holder. She's a person who really helps students and faculty and staff navigate the process of the judicial system for students at Cuesta College. And I know that well because I worked with her for, I don't know, how long we worked together, 15 or so? 20 years, okay. So this is a comment that was made. As resolution specialist, Chris's door is always open to students in distress. Her composed manner always calms them down. She takes the time to listen carefully to the students, explains our policies, and looks for solutions. Many of the students she has had contact with come back again and again, not to be in trouble, but just to check in with her, and they consider her a trusted mentor. Chris is a regular volunteer at commencement with the important task of ensuring the graduates' names are in order and the timing is precise. She deals with some of the most challenged students. She is an excellent listener and quickly establishes rapport with students. One faculty member said, I recall one time a few years ago when I was so upset with an interaction with a student that I arrived at Chris's desk crying and shaking. Chris took the time to sit with me, hold my hand, and ask me what she could do to make it all better. From the Student Health Center, the students have thanked this person for referring them to Chris Wayland, our resolution specialist, and mentioned how compassionate she is to their needs and her willingness to help them navigate the system. Another comment by one of our division chairs is she has the pulse of the campus and has dealt with so many varied situations. I can call her for advice and counsel when the incidents occur. I can always count on her to be fair and straightforward. And then finally, that it is so refreshing to meet someone in academia who truly cares about students and their concerns. So, Chris, these are some of the sentiments from your coworkers. And we have a nice memento for you here. It's a plaque that says, Cuesta College Service Excellence Award presented to Chris Wayland for distinguished performance and excellence in service. And this is presented by the foundation, and it also comes with a check. Yeah.
Well, I don't do mornings. I thank you, sweetheart, for bringing me coffee this morning. It was unusual, but it was helpful. When I first started here, I was young. I really didn't know my way. And I've had so many wonderful mentors. It's been an honor. It's been a privilege. The best we can do is try to make a difference every day, and that's what I try to do. And I get back as much as I give. So I so appreciate this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And now I'd like to turn over the podium to Dr. Bontenbal.
Thank you, Dr. Stork. Good morning. Welcome back. I'm extremely honored to have the opportunity to present the Virginia Sullivan Inspirational Faculty Award. This award was established by Cuesta College Emeritus Faculty Jack Sullivan in the name of his late mother, Virginia Sullivan, who served as a model of inspiration and encouragement to her colleagues. The focus of this award is on fostering and or the exhibition of characteristics which support the growth and overall well-being of faculty colleagues. This award recognizes dynamic, motivating, and nurturing faculty who create a positive work environment through acts which support morale, provide expertise in mentoring, and or contribute to the mental health of colleagues. In addition to a plaque, this award also comes with the highest cash amount of any of the faculty awards, which I believe is the way Jack Sullivan designed it. This year, I'm very pleased to announce that the recipient of the Virginia Sullivan Inspirational Faculty Award is Mike Kinter. I know it may be impossible, but there may be a few folks out there who don't know Mike. So before I tell you all of the fabulous things about him, let me just mention that Mike has been teaching mathematics here at Cuesta College full-time for the last 16 years. Recently, Mike co-founded and teaches an entirely new math course, Math 128, which was designed and so far has proven to be successful to help non-science majors achieve their math goals and progress smoothly to higher math classes that meet the CSU and UC transfer requirements. In addition to his full-time job as math instructor, Mike also puts in at least 20 hours per week as the assistant cross-country coach for Cuesta. In this role, Mike has inspired faculty to treat student athletes with respect and consideration for their efforts on sports teams, and even started a study hall using a combination of his own office hours and personal time for the cross-country team athletes to get assistance with math and other subjects. This study hall concept has been replicated for other sports teams and expanded to include all student athletes at Cuesta. And if that wasn't enough, yes. And if that wasn't enough, Mike also coordinates the faculty mentoring program that helps build relationships among faculty and promotes best teaching practices and services to students. Mike has been involved with organizing this valuable service since 2009 and even serves as a mentor himself. Mike has also been an inspirational participant in both the Wellness Committee and wellness activities for many years. He often uses his statistical knowledge to aid the committee's work, and his connections to the running world are quite valuable when organizing wellness events. His commitment to physical fitness is an example that many people follow, whether it be running, cycling, or swimming. And no one will ever forget his swim fin and snorkel attire that he wore in the opening day parade the Wellness Committee put on several years ago. Hopefully he won't go shirtless today. Some things you may not know about Mike is he's a poker player extraordinaire and even plays in the World Series of Poker. He carries food wherever he goes. It's over there. It must be all that running he does. And along with his wife, Betsy, they manage the menagerie that is all their pets. When both students and colleagues are asked about Mike, the resounding reply is Mike is a kind, warm person who has a positive attitude and provides a gentle but strong encouragement of his students and fellow teachers. Mike always has time to discuss matters related to faculty, student success, or education. He is good at leading without being intrusive and is fun to work with. As one faculty put it, Mike is the epitome of inspiration for his faculty colleagues who exhibits inspirational leadership with the faculty mentoring program, wellness, and supporting student athletes. Mike, congratulations on being the recipient of the Virginia Sullivan Inspirational Faculty Award.
I guess it's kind of appropriate that this is the Academy Awards season, because you know how sometimes when you see somebody win an award, they pretend to be shocked? I am really shocked, honestly. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm always happy to do things under the radar. I mean, I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying that I actually prefer to do things under the radar. I'm not. It's not false modesty. Anyway, to be recognized is fabulous. To be perfectly honest, I owe a debt of gratitude to a ton of people, mentors that I had when I was, when I was a new faculty member, and just people that I work with in all capacities, whether it's track and field. Brian Locher is a fabulous coach, and I think he says way too many nice things about me, to be perfectly honest. And I also owe a debt of gratitude to my wife, who lives under the radar, but when I come home and I'm frustrated, or I have just something that I need to get off my chest, she's willing to listen, and quite often she'll say, to be perfectly honest, you're wrong, okay? And this is what needs to be done, and I'll argue vociferously against that. But usually in the end, I realize that she's right, and the next day I come in with a much calmer attitude towards things and handle things better than I would have had I not talked to her. So anyway, thank you very much for the award, and I really appreciate it.
You see, math people can be inspirational. I knew it. And when he was talking about his wife, I thought he was talking about my wife. She says the same things. November 4th was a real turning point for this college, this county, and the future of Cuesta College, when the voters approved Measure L with a 62% approval rate. I was pleasantly surprised. The vote rang true with the polls that were done. We lived with skepticism about whether the polls meant anything that were done in July and then in October, but they did hold true. And I was even more stunned by the fact that this county, this year, approved every single tax measure. Now, for some of us, that's really good. For some of us who live in districts in which there were multiple taxes, we're saying, oh, I don't know if this feels really good yet, you know. But we all know that, that it was necessary, and because of the good job that everybody did here at Cuesta in terms of telling the story to your friends, your neighbors, people you didn't know, they were convinced that this would make a difference in the lives of the residents of San Luis Obispo County, current and future. To those individuals who approached me and said, you know, I don't have any skin in this game. My kids are grown. I don't see any benefit that it's going to give me by voting for this tax measure. And I said, why do you live in San Luis County? He says, well, because it's a wonderful place to live. It's a wonderful place for me to have raised my family. And I can go to places where people appreciate an intellectual conversation, whether it be in a coffee shop or in a book club. Or I get to be surrounded by people who appreciate art and music and other of the fine things that make life vibrant and meaningful. I said, that's why you need to vote for Measure L, is that so you continue to surround yourself with an educated populace who appreciates those kinds of things that we take for granted and why we choose to live in this part of the world. That's why you vote for Measure L. And they did. And congratulations to all of you for your efforts and your work in making this reality happen. That's the good news. The bad news is we're going to have a hell of a lot of disruption going on around here over the next 12 years. So anyway, I would like to invite Tony Summer and our mastermind, Terry Reese, and all he's done in terms of working with architects and construction managers and contractors in preparing this whole plan of how we're going to make it work. Because you'd understand the intricacies of the financing, the building requirements, the logistics of being able to take a campus and renovate it into something that we all want to see happen. So they're going to help understand that and give you some information that you will have in your hip pocket to be able to share with people, ask, what are you doing with my money? Because that's what we hear on a daily basis. Terry and Tony, thank you.
Okay, it's been 40 years since Cuesta College had a bond, but they did pass Measure L, as Dr. Stork just said. And first of all, I'd like to give a round of applause to the voters of San Luis Obispo County, please. I'd like to also give a round of applause to our Board of Trustees. They were very, very cautious in this decision and very mindful, but they had the guts to put it on the ballot. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you who helped us or chose not to be silent if you weren't necessarily for it, to allow this to happen. So thank you to all of us. Okay, so now we get to do this, and what I need to let you know that Measure L, as a reminder, was $275 million. When we put together our list of projects, and we worked very hard before the bond to actually put real numbers to these projects. A lot of colleges don't do that. They kind of pull a number and then hopefully make it all fit. But Terry and his team and all of us put a lot of work into deciding what the actual numbers should be. And we asked actually the board for $286 million. $1,100 million than they actually approved. And so now we're working really hard to stay within that budget and still do all the projects, but we're already, just so you know, we're doing $286 million worth of projects with $275 million. I also want everybody to understand this is 14 years of projects. We're already getting questions like, when do I get my classroom changed? When do I get my new office? You might in 13 and a half years, okay? It's 14 years of projects, and so this should become pretty normal to you. What we promised the voters, and we were very, very true that we were going to be very transparent with the voters and make sure. One of the things, if any message I can leave behind after I leave, is everything we do in the implementation of this bond is part of the campaign for the next bond. So we need to remain true to that promise and do it appropriately. And what we promised them is we would do repairs. We have about $140 million in repairs that have to be done. Remember, we haven't had a bond in 40 years. We have, by September 30th, we have to remove the modulars, and we're going to eventually replace that with permanent buildings. You're going to think we're a little bit weird because the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to replace the modulars with modulars. The modulars that we're going to bring in is just for staging over the next 14 years as we move people around. We'll do technology updates and upgrades, which I'm sure you'll fully appreciate. And there is a fifth building that is outside the modular project, and that's the Trades and Technology Center in North County. And we will retire all our debt in at least the next 4 years. So the bond, at this point, the plan is to issue it in 4 issuances. We have legislation that requires us to spend at least 85% of any money we have from the bond within 3 years. And so you kind of do it piecemeal by chunks because you can't spend it fast enough. And that seems only appropriate and responsible. So for the first issuance, the plan, which will be done between 2015 and 2018, is we will be doing the most immediate repairs. We will be removing the modulars and bringing modulars in to at least get that regulation met. We will build a North County campus center to put the people that are taken out of modulars in North County into a permanent facility. We will be building a San Luis instructional building. We will be working on what we want to do in terms of technology, and we will pay off one of the cops. So I will let Terry take it now and talk about how we're going to make that all happen in the next 3 years.
Good morning.
Okay, you guys all need to pay attention because you're only going to have them for 5 of these 14 years, so pay attention the next 5 years.
Yeah, $75 million in 3 years. Okay. Good morning. Okay, get to the right page here. The bond team. One of the things that we wanted to do this morning is explain what the bond team is. There's 2 different groups of folks that are working on these projects. I mean, if you think about it, 75,000 square foot of buildings going up in 3 years. It's a lot of work, but what goes along with that is moving all the faculty and staff out of, nearly 60,000 square feet of modulars, putting them back into portables, moving them back out of portables, moving them into new structures, and not, creating too much of a mess. So we need a sufficient team to set up these projects, and I believe we have that. But before I tell you what the team is that's handling the bond, I wanted to make the point that the most important bond team is the Cuesta College staff and faculty. For those that have been in the pre-planning, I mean, Sandy's sitting there going, yeah. For those of you that have been in the pre-planning, you know that any of these structures or any of these projects that have moved forward in the first issuance have already included faculty and staff. It's the most important part of the team because that's where we take our direction. So as you see a project coming that's going to affect your area, expect that you're going to be involved, and that input is critical to the success of the project. Quickly, the bond team, to give you a feel of what it takes to run $75 million in 3 years, just the campus center alone in the North County has 18 professionals working on it right now. That's through the architectural team, through the construction management team, through the bond administration team, to Tony's team, and my office. So it's extensive. Our 3 partners are PMSM Architects, Block Construction, and Kitchell Construction. So that's the bond team. Again, very skilled. PMSM, we pulled their 2 lead architects out of Santa Barbara and their 1 lead architect out of San Luis Obispo, and very high quality folks. We have 2 sub-architects working on the 2 projects that are running in parallel right now, which is the pool project and the roofing renovation project, and also on the modular project. So very deep, very well staffed. You do that very well. Okay, the immediate repairs. One of the things that the voter was very clear about, and something that we've seen in blogs as late as last week, is the idea that Cuesta College passed a bond with the perception that we were going to repair buildings, and we're just going to put up new buildings instead. Because what they see right now are these 2 new buildings leading the way in the media. One point to be taken is those 2 new buildings are to replace modulars that we're required to replace. That's the heart of those 2 new buildings. If those 2 new buildings weren't needed immediately, we would be coming out of the gate with $10 to $15, $20 million worth of repairs. So, that's a point that needs to be brought forward. The first immediate repairs that were identified were 4 roofs. We scoured the whole campus. We brought in a team of folks to see what was the immediate need. The 4 roofs are on the 1,000 building, 1,100 building, the 4,200 building, the 4,500 building, and the 4,600 building. Not only are those roofs absolutely destroyed, as they are original, well, somewhat original to their original construction, but the HVAC is completely gone also. Anybody that's taken a welding class here at Cuesta, it kind of has an early 1970s LA feel with the smog level in the class. And we've determined that's probably not good for the teaching environment. And so in the first go-round, the HVAC in the welding lab that's been sorely needed will be addressed also. The timeline for those are in, they've already been reviewed. They're with the architect and the mechanical engineer. Those are scheduled to be completed between the 2 breaks between spring and summer and fall. The second project that is a critical repair is, we've got a couple nicknames for the swimming pool, leach field, some other things, but it doesn't hold water like we like it to, and so we've been working diligently on, which is kind of the whole point of a pool, been working really hard and figuring out how we both work in a project of a swimming pool and still be responsible to our community members that use Cuesta College's swimming pool. So we've been working at possibly a short-term solution, a mid-term solution, and a long-term solution. Again, Jason Curtis, the dean in that area, John Marsh were involved recently in the initial planning of these projects. And we expect to have a path that we determine is the best path to present to Tony probably by the end of next week. Depending on that path tells us when we're going to do the job. So we're not quite sure when we're going to kick it off. We know when all 3 of the projects, each one of them have an assigned timeline. The most critical, the largest repair, if we go in that direction, would start in February of 2016. At that point, we would move into our second tier of emergency repairs, which is similar to the 4 roofs. It's just the next step. The modular project. Okay. Modular project is going to touch just about everybody on campus. At first review, between the modulars on the San Luis campus, sure.
For those of you who are not aware, there is Ed Code that's been out there for a while, and it was one of those laws passed way back in the day that, you know, you suddenly come up against. If you have modulars, which we have hundreds of thousands of them throughout the states in the K-14s that are not DSA approved, and back in the day they didn't go through the Department of State Architects, that they must in fact be either taken through the Department of State Architects at current code or be removed by September 30th, 2015. In case you're not aware, we're now in January 2015, so this date is making why that it's so critical that we in fact go after this modular problem so quickly.
And the questions come up how Cuesta College got themselves in the position of having modulars that weren't DSA approved sitting on their campus and into this corner. This regulation has caught a lot of districts off guard. I don't believe it actually caught Cuesta College off guard. If you look at the planning of the North County Campus Center, and you look at the law that says you're allowed to put modulars in place for 3 years, and then you're allowed an extension of 3 years, Cuesta College put on the 2006 bond the need to replace those modulars. The fact that we didn't pass the bond put us in a very difficult situation, but I believe the planning was there. The point is, at this point, we have no choice but to get rid of these modulars, and we have a plan. So, the modulars, we have a 5-person team working on just the planning of the modulars. We've identified the need for 28 portable structures to be brought on to the 2 campuses combined. The majority of those structures will be brought onto the North County campus. The area has been identified behind the 2400 building. It's between the 2400 building and the berm by the residential area. On the San Luis Obispo campus, the 2 primary staging areas are behind the cafeteria, which for those of you that were around for Emerald City and the library expansion, that is where they're going. Behind the cafeteria will be primarily student-facing needs. It's going to be our classrooms, such as the 2000 classroom that's going to be taken offline, and a couple of the others. They'll be located where the students can get to fairly easily. Taking care of the faculty needs will probably be over by the 6800 building. So North County, just about everything is going to be located directly behind the 24, with the Children's Center having their own structure. Should be fairly nice, at least for a while. There will be some differences between where you live now and where you're going to go in the portables. The portables in general run about 30% smaller in overall space. So if you're living in one of those little 60 square foot offices, you're probably safe because we can't make them smaller than that. But if you're living in a 120 foot office right now, you may end up with a much smaller cubicle for a short period of time. The upside is after the construction, where you're going is going to be hopefully very nice. So we expect the modulars to start moving in towards the end of spring. With packing starting in May. We want to get people enough time to get packed, not a rush, and moving mid-June through mid-August for a successful September launch. Okay, North County Campus Center and San Luis Obispo Instructional Building. These buildings are running in parallel. They're almost identical in timeline. We had an analysis, a third-party analysis, as to where Cuesta stands right now versus where other districts would stand that have just passed the bond. Where we sit right now is approximately 12 months ahead of where we should be in planning as far as any other district in general. Okay. Most of that 12 months came from all of the hard work for 3 years in advance of the bond with the North County Facilities Needs Assessment, which so many of you were involved in, and also the San Luis Obispo campus assessments that we've had, and that's allowed us to get these projects this far down the road. We expect all of the front-end work to be done and the plans to go to DSA, Department of State Architect, who is our regulatory agency, in the end of May, with response back from them in November, and going out to bid and construction starting in February. It's an incredibly tight timeline. We are working right now to make up 2 weeks in the next 12 months. That's how tight it is. So one other thing that Cuesta has done, and something that Tony has insisted from day one, is third-party reviews. And we just got done completing the third-party review of the cost of these two buildings to make sure that the buildings that we're designing we can actually afford, which is something different for Cuesta College. So, it's true. It's called, we're going back out to bid again. We have requested and received qualifications from 3 national technology consultants to help us with our institutional technology implementation plan. We're also in communication with Sherry Waters, and also we'll be working with the new, with Keith, the new director or executive director of instructional technology. The allocation, approximate allocation for the first dollar amount for the first allocation for technology is approximately $1.5 to $2 million. I believe that is more money than Cuesta has spent in the last 20 years on technology, and we'll be spending that in the next 3 years.
Okay, this has been my albatross. As you well know, we have 3 certificates of participation. Those were loans that we've made over the last decades for capital projects. Remember, we have not had a bond for 40 years, and so therefore we still had capital needs, repairs of buildings, building of buildings, gap financing, and when we got state bond money, but it didn't match the bid. And so we have done that with certificates of participation. We currently have 3 certificates of participation, and we named them by the year that they were in fact procured. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you which projects are in these, because most of these also included refinancing of previous COPs, okay? But this is what we have. We currently have about $19 million in total debt payments between the 3 COPs. And currently, we have the Student Association, the bookstore, and parking fees that help contribute to the annual payments, but it's still about $1.2 million of general fund that goes into debt payments every year. And so part of what we wanted to do was to be able to relieve that debt payment, because a bond is used for capital projects, and these COPs were used for capital projects, so therefore we are eligible to be paid off with the bond. Again, since we had many projects and deadlines, and it was not necessarily the utmost of priorities with our voters, we are spreading paying these COPs off. So I'd like to explain real quickly. As you see, the first COP, which is our smallest, the reason it's going to be paid off in 2017, 2018, because that's when it's done. It was going to be paid off that year anyway, okay? And it was our intent to pay off the 2006 COP with this first issuance in the next couple of months. And hopefully that's still going to happen. But the reason you see the or is that if we do not pay off the 2006, we'll pay off the 2009 and then go back and pick up the 2006 with the second issuance. So either the 6 or the 9 will be paid in this issuance, and the other one 4 years from now. If, in fact, and we're checking some numbers because we hit a little bit of a hiccup last week, I apologize. What happens is these COPs require the last year's payment in reserve, kind of like you pay up front your last month's rent. So each of these COPs has a reserve attached to them, and when they're paid off, that reserve will be released. We have worked out a schedule that, given what we put aside this fiscal year, the $1.3 million for the payments anyway, that will be the last time we will ever use a general fund dollar to make a COPS payment. What will happen is we will continue having the contributions from the student Association, we will continue with the bookstore and the parking fees, but we're trying to time it so that as these reserve accounts are released, those reserve amounts will then go towards the COPS payments till we get them all paid off. We were hoping to pay the first COP off this March. That will not happen till August because we can only make payments when the taxes are due, and they're only due twice a year. So you can expect to see a COP paid off this summer. So any questions about that? I feel like I need to give you a quiz. I'm lecturing, you know. Okay, the last little piece of information, or maybe it's almost the last piece of information, is having a bond requires a citizen oversight committee. And that oversight committee meets several times a year. And basically, they do not make decisions on what we spend the bond money. They audit to make sure what we spend the bond money is, in fact, what was in the measure. When we put it on the ballot, similar like you do your syllabus, we offered and said, if you give us this money, this is what we're going to use it for. When the voters approved it, similar to your students staying in the class, they've accepted those terms. The Citizens Oversight Board makes sure that we only spend money within the terms of the bond measure. We are required to have the Citizens Oversight Committee within 60 days of the board accepting the election results. If you are a very close board agenda monitor, you will have noticed that the board has not yet accepted the results of the Measure L part of the ballot. And we will be doing that in February, and that will start that clock. But we have been advertising since December because it's somewhat difficult to get all the members, and we're trying to take as much time as possible. So I need your help. If you have anybody who is interested in being the Citizens Oversight Board, there is an application. I need one student who is currently enrolled. I need one member who can represent a business organization, a member to represent a senior citizen organization, one for taxpayers, and one who is in active support, an organization actively supporting the college, such as the foundation, and two at large. And so if you know of anybody who would be interested, please have them contact my office and we will immediately get them an application. Yes? Basically the Board of Trustees. Well, they would be coordinated by my office. They don't necessarily report to. Obviously, I think what your question is that they find something wrong. Then probably to the Board of Trustees, and that would probably go to the fair practices, election fair practices. They're an organization or association, remember, in Sacramento. We will not have that problem. But good question. Any other questions? Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. They will probably be meeting quarterly. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is communication. We're very eager to be able to make sure both our internal and external communities know what we're doing. It helps with people having accurate information and with gossip that I don't need to deal with. It keeps my life really busy. So initially, you have been receiving some emails from me because that is the quickest way that we can at least put out some information. We have also, if you go to the Board of Trustees meeting, there is a standing item at this point for updates for Measure L. I'm sure it will show up in the President forums when it's appropriate. And we're hoping by March to have a special website strictly about the bond, what projects are coming up, what the status is of projects and such. And at that time, you'll probably see less emails from me. So if you want to know about the bond, there's no secrets. We have this plan, and we need all the help we can get to get the word out and keep the information accurate. So that's what we have about the bond so far. Is there any questions? Yes? You know, I would have to check and I'll get back, but my understanding, it cannot be an employee. Okay. Yes? because we can only issue so much money at a time, and we have that September deadline on the modulars, which means we also have to build a couple of buildings to put people in, as well as, and we have repairs. So what we decided to do is to stagger them. Okay? And like I said, we worked out a way that after this year, there's no more general fund anyway. We were very excited when we tripped into that. And I have to actually thank Shannon Hill and Rick Camarillo from the foundation, because they came into my office trying to figure out how we could take advantage of the bond and the cops. And I don't even remember what the idea they had, but as a result of that conversation and talking to the attorneys, we found that if we staged it just right, we could actually take an immediately cash flow advantage of where we were at. Any other questions? Okay, if not, thank you very much. Want me just to go? Oh, you guys are leaving the best part. Oh, do we need a quick one? No? Okay. So anyway, as Dr. Stork said, I'm normally not here for opening day because I'm usually at the budget workshop. And so I'm going to do a real quick budget update. When I came in 1998, I kind of made a checklist of what I had to get done before I could retire. And I think the checklist was buying a new cutter for the welding department. And I was able to do that. And then my thing was, let's see if we could support and facilitate Skills USA and all the work that John Stokes was doing. And I wanted a state champion within 5 years, and we had a national champion within 2.5 years. So thank you, John. And then when I got this job, the first thing I said is we need a bond, and nobody wanted to talk bonds. So we were able to get a bond, so that's really cool. And then the last thing I wanted to do was leave you with a solvent budget. I get to retire at the end of February. We have a solvent budget. Okay, as those of you, you always hear you can't understand where you're at unless you know where you came from, and you don't know where you're going unless you know where you're at. So I'm going to do a real quick historical review. Okay, so where have we been? So from 2008 through 2012, the district received 7 budget cuts. In fact, 3 of those budget cuts were done in the same fiscal year. And in case you haven't noticed, we don't move real quick between law and shared governance and such. Trying to move that quick and have that kind of flexibility was a real credit to all of us here. And the budget cuts were over $9 million. At that time, when we started this process, we had about a $48 million budget. So it was a significant part of our budget. And we had funded FTEs in 2008-9 of over 9,500. Actually, we earned over 10,000, but we were only funded for the 9,500. And in 13-14, we had 8380 that were in fact funded. So you can see that we've become much smaller. And one of the reasons that happened was because they came up with a new way of doing budget cuts. Instead of cutting our budget, they cut the number of FTEs, full-time equivalent students, that we would be paid for. So districts had several options. Districts with very large reserves, and there are districts that have reserves over 20%, were able to, in fact, continue teaching above what they were receiving. Districts that stayed closer to their reserves did not have quite that luxury, and so they were forced, and that was the purpose by the state, they were forced to cut their offerings as a way to cut their budgets. Okay, so you can see we did that by this graph. We actually cut our FTEs, the amount of students we were able to accommodate. What also happened, and you've heard this term efficiency, our efficiencies also went down, okay? So this is also a problem that's kind of part of this whole equation. So what did we do? We did budget cuts because we had to shrink the college. We were not getting as much money. We had built ourselves up to 10,000 FTEs. In fact, we had the luxury, as consequence would favor us, that we hit that 10,000 mark and therefore got an extra $1 million to our base. And then immediately the state came back and cut us, which means we could not retain that mid-size threshold, but we got that money for another 3 years. And so we appropriately and responsibly actually made a decision in planning and budget that we would not budget that $1 million, but put it in a reserve, an extra reserve account, so that a contingency account, so that we could float some of it through. But even with that, we had to make budget cuts. So in 2011-12, we did a budget reduction plan that was not quite $1 million. In 12-13, we did another one, which was almost $1.3 million. There was cutting of staff, faculty in terms of part-time faculty. We did almost 40 layoffs. At least half of those were people who were in jobs. And so it was quite, and we made cuts to operational budgets. And so we tried to retain as much as we could, but it was consequences to that. I don't know how you felt, but I have suspicion that I was not alone. I felt like I was voting people off the island, and it was not a fun. I spent many drives home on the grade in tears, about who had to be laid off. So what we did, and with the blessing of the board, is we did a 5-year budget reduction plan with the idea that if we could make the cuts in the first of the 5 years and then allow those cuts to stand for 5 years, we could do less cuts and not have to go through this very painful exercise every single year. And in that case, we actually even did some program eliminations, which of course was also not very much fun. And we were able to cut out of the budget $1.6 million, knowing that in the next 5 years, basically from inflation, that we would be over $8 million in deficit because we were getting no new money. One of the gutsy moves about that long-term budget reduction plan, it had an assumption there'd be no more cuts. And that was a little bit gutsy because we had already experienced 7 cuts. So anyway, so we did that. And as luck would happen, Proposition 30 actually passed. A lot of us expected it not to pass. It wasn't polling very well. But what it did, it prevented that 8th cut. And that 8th cut for us would have been $2.8 million on top of the already $9 million we had cut. So what it did, it actually supported the assumption we made that there would be no more cuts. And we did projections based on flat revenue and tried to see what we need to do to absorb the inflationary factor. Please understand that part of that Prop 30 actually expires in 2016 as the sales tax goes away, and in 2018 the income tax revenue portion of Prop 30 goes away. Now, I just went to budget workshop. The question naturally came up, what are the chances of being extended? The governor's being pretty straightforward in terms of he promised the taxpayers a limited tax, but at the same time is not necessarily being insistent. So we'll have to kind of live and see what happens with Prop 30. The idea is as the state economy gets stronger, then the state revenue will replace these dollars. And the state economy is, in fact, outperforming projections at this point, which is one of the reasons I'm going to be talking about what we're going to get next year. Maybe I'll just do it now. No, I'll come back to it, okay. That way you'll have to stay, right? Okay. Okay, so we're now in year 2014-15, and we have an interesting situation because all of a sudden you're seeing all this spending. Okay, like what the heck is going on? Purchasing is very happy. They're busy. Accounting's busy. You guys have all been busy running around trying to get me requisitions and such. So let me explain what's happening this year. We have Measure L, which we talked about in the previous presentation, and it's 14 years of projects. What also passed the same time as Proposition 30 was Proposition 39. Now, there's a little caveat. There's two Proposition 39s, okay? Proposition 39 that was passed in the late 90s is the proposition that allows us to do bonds that only require 55% vote. So you'll hear sometimes the term Prop 39 attached to our bond because we ran our bond under the rules of Proposition 39, only having to get a 55% approval rating. There is a second Prop 39, and it was passed as a special tax that would be given to energy projects. And so for the last couple of years, Cuesta has in fact participated in that program, and that's why you can see at night, because we've been replacing the lighting, for example, on campus, some gym lighting and this type of things. And those are different projects that have been, we've been working on with this special tax money. So when you see the gym lights being replaced, but not the lights in your classroom, is because the lights in your classroom are Measure L, and the lights in the gym are Proposition 39, okay? Okay, the other thing that's happened, and I've been in this position since about 2007 on and off, is we finally, last year and this year, got scheduled maintenance dollars. So we have not seen scheduled maintenance dollars like we have not seen COLA, like you have not seen raises since 2007. And we've been getting money. What was interesting is they were not funding instructional equipment because apparently we don't need instructional equipment, okay? And the Chancellor's Office in the coming of the actual final budget for 2014-2015 argued heavily for instructional equipment money. Now, what I'm about to say is somewhat important. Scheduled maintenance, the community college system has a statewide database of the current status of every single building in the system. It's what repairs it needs, what its replacement cost would be, et cetera, et cetera. They can, by a push of a report, tell the legislature what we need in scheduled maintenance, and that has played very well. We do not have such a system in instructional equipment, and part of the problem is there's no main database, and the other part is we just kind of all make it happen with bubble gum and Band-Aids. And so the legislature was very, very suspicious because they had no evidence that we needed instructional equipment. So the compromise that was brought upon the budget this year was individual districts could take their scheduled maintenance dollars, their one-time scheduled maintenance dollars, and split them with instructional equipment expenditures as they saw fit. But normally, scheduled maintenance goes out 3 years. They put a caveat that we could only use these one-time scheduled maintenance dollars over 2 years, and if you put any of them in instructional equipment, they had to be spent in 1 year. You understand, to get our jobs, we have this little Rubik Cube test, you know, because its puzzles are always interesting. So we had an interesting dilemma because we had to actually get our expenditures pre-approved by the Chancellor's Office by October as what our splits were going to be and what we were going to buy. But we had a little interesting opportunity out there on the horizon called November 4th, and what would happen if, in fact, we actually got a bond. So we got permission to put in most of that money towards scheduled maintenance, because you know we have a swimming pool problem and a roof problem and this type of thing, and a little bit for instructional equipment, but we could change our mind come November 5th. So what happened, as you all know, we got Measure L, and we went back and we moved, except for, I think, 2 small projects, we moved over $900,000 of our $1.1 million of scheduled maintenance to instructional equipment. But we had to absolutely, in fact, my children are on the line now, okay, that we would make that June 2015 deadline to spend all this money. They didn't think we could do it. So thanks to academic affairs, they got ready. Thanks to our planning process, we pulled IPPRs, we pulled planning and budget, district resource allocation priorities, we pulled technology plans, etc., and we made a master list. There was also a little bit also pegged for the library. And we were able to get 65 projects on this list. Five of the projects, unfortunately, were ineligible for instructional equipment. Three of the projects had, in fact, been completed already, and three of those projects had, in fact, never submitted, because they all had to submit requisitions by the end of December. I also took a bet, and I made another personal goal, and I also get to retire because I wanted to, what was ever left on the list, to fund. So what we found we were able to do is take our instructional equipment money, this one-time instructional equipment money. Some of the items on there were not, in fact, instructional equipment. You have to be over $200 to be considered equipment. And so, for example, in kinesiology, they were doing some major exercise equipment and jump ropes. Jump ropes do not count, okay? So what we did is I took some lottery money, and whatever was in those that were, in fact, supplies, we put it over to the lottery money, okay? Because we haven't spent it in a couple years. So there's still plenty for planning and budget. And then if, in fact, we let people redo their bids, if anybody came in over bid, we actually pulled in a little bit of department monies. And I am pleased to say that the 65 projects, which are now 55, every single one of those 55 projects will be funded, have already started the ordering, will be received, and we will make the June 2015 deadline. So you will have instructional equipment this year. 2015-2016. This is what is in the governor's proposed budget that came out January 9th. Please notice that there is no scheduled maintenance nor instructional equipment dollars there, okay? So use your equipment